Hey there and welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on something that impacts every single one of us every single day, public finance. We're going to follow the money and see exactly how it all works. I mean, it's a huge question, isn't it? You pay your taxes, you see these massive government projects happening, but how does it all connect? How does the government decide what to spend all that cash on, and where does it even come from in the first place? Well, that's exactly what we're about to unpack.
At its core, public finance is really just that. It's about managing the country's money. The easiest way to think about it is like a giant household budget. But, instead of planning for groceries and rent, the government's planning for things like national defense, new highways, and public health. It's the same world of income and expenses, just with a lot more zeros at the end.
Now here's where it gets really interesting and what makes this household budget so different from our own. For you and me, our income decides how much we can spend. But for the government, it's often the complete opposite. They first figure out what society needs, like better schools or new hospitals, and then they figure out how to raise the money for it. And as you can see, that one huge difference changes everything, from its credit status to its massive impact on the economy. The goal isn't profit, it's social welfare.
So let's start with that first half of the equation, the spending. Where is all this money actually going?
And this page from our source material tells the story perfectly. Public spending isn't a flat line. It's been on a steady and sometimes pretty steep climb. Let's face it, governments today have way more responsibilities than they used to, from Social Security to sparking economic growth. And to give you a real sense of the scale we're talking about, just look at that number. Over 17 trillion rupees. That's what was spent in just 1 year in India. It's a number so big, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around, and it really begs the question.
Why is it so high? And why does it keep on growing? Well, it's not just one thing, it's a whole mix of stuff. A bigger population needs more services, right? More people are moving to cities, and that means we need more infrastructure. Then you've got rising defense costs, inflation making everything more expensive, plus the need to fund huge development projects. Every single one of these things puts this powerful upward pressure on spending.
Okay, so we've seen the massive spending. That naturally leads us to the next big question. How on earth does the government pay for all of it? Let's flip over to the revenue side of things. This chart gives us a perfect roadmap. The government's income, what we call public revenue, is basically split into two big buckets. You've got tax revenue, which is the big one we all know about, and then there's non-tax revenue. So let's dive into taxes first.
Taxes basically come in two main flavors, direct and indirect. A direct tax, like the income tax taken from your paycheck, is paid directly by you. You can't pass that cost on to somebody else. But an indirect tax, that's levied on goods and services. The company pays it at first, but they can, and they absolutely do, shift that cost right onto you, the person buying the product.
And here is a perfect real-world example, a GST receipt. Next time you look at one, you'll see that little line for tax. Every time you buy a coffee, a new phone, pretty much anything, a little piece of that price is an indirect tax. It's just woven into the fabric of our daily lives.
But, taxes aren't the only way the government makes money. It also brings in cash from things like fees for passports, fares for train tickets, and of course, fines for breaking traffic laws. It's definitely a smaller piece of the pie, but it all adds up.
So we've got spending on one side and income on the other. But what happens when they don't match up? Well, that brings us to the great balancing act of public finance.
This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of modern public finance. It might sound a little worrying, but for a government, having expenses be higher than income is, it's pretty normal. It's not seen as a failure, it's actually a financial tool. That gap gets filled by raising debt.
This entire plan is all laid out every single year in the budget. Now, you could have a balanced budget where income equals spending. You could have a surplus where you earn more than you spend. Or you can have the most common scenario for modern governments, a deficit budget, where you actually plan to spend more than you earn. This is often done on purpose to boost the economy and fund big projects that'll benefit people for years to come.
So we've looked at spending, revenue, debt, and the budget. But let's zoom out for a second and see how all these pieces click together to create the bigger picture.
Because as this flowchart shows so well, all these things we've been talking about, expenditure, revenue, debt, they're all deeply connected. A decision about taxes, for example, directly impacts how much debt the government might need to take on. These choices create ripple effects across the entire economy, and way more importantly, across our daily lives.
So here's the bottom line. The crucial point is this.
Public finance isn't some boring, abstract theory. It's the engine that literally funds the world around you. The taxes you pay, the debt the government takes on, that becomes the very fabric of our society. It's the roads you drive on, the schools in your neighborhood, and the defense of the entire nation.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. Understanding how the system works is the first step. The next step is thinking about what we want from it, because with limited funds and unlimited needs, it all comes down to priorities. So now that you have a better idea of how it all works, what do you think the government's #1 financial priority should be?